Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host for today. We are talking UFC 321, headlined by Tom Aspinall and Ciryl Gane. We're going to be breaking down four plays here on the show today. Now, listen, we are coming off finding out RDR is a complete fraud last weekend. Now, I don't really care if he was sick, broke his hand, whatever it was. He was in the cage. I thought he looked terrible. He costed us a profitable 10-unit night last weekend. We did catch some profit. We were able to have another profitable evening for clients, but man, he sure costed us. But we're going to hammer this card this weekend because I absolutely love it from a betting perspective. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. I already have plays up for clients right now, so dive in if you're interested. And with that being said, let's dive into the main event of the evening between Tom Aspinall and Ciryl Gane. Now, you've got Tom Aspinall sitting at minus 400 on the comeback here. You've got Ciryl Gane sitting at plus 300. They got the current champion, Tom Aspinall, who's been absolutely running through opponents. And there is one opponent that ran from him. That is Jon Jones. Now, trust me when I say this, if somehow Jon Jones could have gotten a rematch with Stipe, he would still be in the UFC. He absolutely ran from Tom Aspinall, but that's maybe another conversation for another day. But overall, Tom Aspinall is maybe one of the most dangerous heavyweights we have seen just because how well-rounded he is. The guy is really elite and, he's got that boxing. He's got fantastic, hand speed. He's got big-time power. He can mix it up in the pocket very well. And also, he's got the takedowns. He doesn't have that many takedowns, but he does have the ability to look for takedowns. He's 4 for 4, 100% takedown rate, and has submission ability. So having that ability to mix it up, level change, really throws off a lot of heavyweights because not many heavyweights move like him where they're able to mix in some takedowns, but yet have that big-time power overall. Now, Ciryl Gane, on the other side here, there's no doubt that he does present some threats here. And one of the biggest being the fact that he is also a very much an elite level striker, and he's an elite level kickboxer. That's one thing that he does have here, where he's got great combinations, fast hand speed, very good distance management. And that's something I think is going to be interesting here to kind of see how that plays out, that he's going to be, in and out of the pocket very much. That Aspinall is going to want to be a little bit more looking in that boxing range, but Ciryl, he's going to be a guy that, wants to be on his bike a little bit, be at range, utilize that kicking arsenal, work in space. So it'll be interesting to see. But when you look at really the power dynamic here, Ciryl Gane is a guy that, yes, he's got knockouts on his record, but he doesn't have that one punch knockout power. He definitely lacks that. We saw that with, Tuivasa, where he was able to land some big shots, couldn't put him away until it was like death by accumulation, landing shots, and just really being repetitive with that. Again, this is heavyweight division. These guys, these big boys throw hard, but that's something that he does lack, where that is going to be a big advantage there for Tom Aspinall, having that one punch knockout power overall. He's a rangy striker in Ciryl Gane, and I think he's going to be looking to utilize some of that range, some of that, being able to kind of stay at distance, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But the big, I think, anyone who's breaking down this fight is going to talk about is the biggest disadvantage here for Ciryl Gane, and it's going to be, his poor defensive wrestling. There's no doubt that the guy doesn't really have the greatest defensive wrestling. Not only, can he be taken down, but he can be kept down, and that's something, again, that kind of fits into something that Tom Aspinall might want to utilize here. If you're going to have Ciryl Gane working at range, working in space, getting his hands on him, getting those takedowns might be something that he might want to look into there. But you also look at the fact that over the last 5 fights for Ciryl Gane, he's been taken down 9 times. That's not good. But what's really bad about it is who's taking him down. It's more or less that's really what it looks at. And you look at here, the big red flag, I think, to me, is the fact that, Volkov was able to take him down 3 times with 4 minutes of control time. I think that is a really bad look for a kickboxer, somebody that was I think was one, if not the top 2 out of his career with most takedowns. And he knew that there's a vulnerability there. There's a place where I can expose Ciryl and get some takedowns. And you also even look with the Francis Ngannou fight. Ngannou was 4 for 5 on takedowns with 8 minutes of control time. And even that is just a terrible look, where these guys are strikers, and they were able to find success, get takedowns, get control time, ground and pound a little bit, be in top position. And now you've got somebody like Tom Aspinall, who is, who does have the wrestling ability to really utilize that more than these guys do. Now, early, I think there is an opportunity here for Aspinall to land a big knockout on the feet. He's explosive, has that fast hand speed, but I do think it could come from these takedowns. As we were just talking about, there's takedowns, there's the ability there. I think that he can land something big on the feet, but I think the takedowns come, and I do think the ground and pound is a little bit more likely, in my opinion, here, where out of his 8 UFC wins, 6 are by knockout. And I do think that's kind of where this goes here. I think the threat of the takedowns is going to scare Gane, make him a little bit more timid in the pocket. And I do think that Tom Aspinall does get a knockout finish here. So I'm going to be going Tom Aspinall inside the first 3 rounds by knockout. Is sitting around plus 110. I love that number. You're going to give me plus money on that within the first 3 rounds. I am taking it. I do believe he gets this win by knockout. So I'm going Tom Aspinall inside the first 3 rounds by knockout at plus 110. Now, the next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Mackenzie Dern. She is minus 155. On the comeback here, we have Verna Jandiroba. She is plus 130. Now, before I dive into this, real quickly, give a shout out to my sponsor, Caesars Sportsbook. If you do not have an account and you want one and you want a nice promo, here you go. All you got to do is open up an account, use promo code Mr. UFC 20X. That is MRUFC 20X. All you got to do is deposit money, bet $1 or more, and you instantly get back 20 profit boosts up to $25 each instantly. So all you got to do, win or lose in that first bet, you still get all of those. If you want more information and the link, it's down below. And with that being said, let's dive into this co-main event of the evening here. Now, you've got Mackenzie Dern versus Verna Jandiroba. Now, Verna, 6-1 run, has looked good here. And what she's been able to do is really utilize that wrestling. Get the wrestling going, win positionally, get control time, stay on top of them, be relentless with it, and kind of, smother really anything that the offense can do there and just kind of slow things down. It's not the most sexiest way to win a fight, but she's been able to do it in certain spots. Overall, grind out that top time. Now, overall, going back, watching tape, I really think this is a very bad stylistic matchup for Verna. I just think, and you've got someone that, is looking to wrestle. She's going to do it. She's going to look for those takedowns, and it's going right into the strength of Mackenzie Dern. And I think that's a really tough, setup for her, where it's either I do believe she's going to look for takedowns. I don't think that she can really take away one of her best weapons, which is wrestling, and then just stand and strike. And if she does, that's just, I think, even better for Dern. You're not going to utilize your best weapon. I think that's kind of going to be very tough for Verna to really kind of find opportunities to win rounds, win minutes overall. And, I still think she's going to look to secure those takedowns. But when she does, or if she does, she's going to be sitting in the guard of Dern, and Dern is just so elite when it comes to her submission game overall. And the one thing that she does also is not only that she's going to continually hunt for those submissions, but also the fact that she uses these submissions for, positional movement on the ground, sweeps, reversals, looking for, a way to kind of get dominant position. And that's something that she's able to do very well. And even when she's been able to do that and get a dominant position on the ground, she absolutely controls the situation. She's relentlessly hunting for those submissions. And I think it's just a very, very tough setup for Verna to find success anywhere on the ground. She's very active. She's going to always hunt for those. And I just think that, it's a bad setup, and that's really where I think this fight is going to be won or lost. Now, of course, Dern doesn't have the best takedown defense. She doesn't really care. She wants to be on the ground. She wants to, have the ability to utilize her jiu-jitsu, but on the feet, this is something that I think that really is going to be very difficult for Verna also. Now, as I was just saying, if she doesn't go for those takedowns, she decides to keep it on the feet. I think that, Dern is going to be the better striker. I think that she's, shown that she consistently is improving her striking. She's the harder hitter between these two also. She's got that aggressive style where she's going to cut the distance, throw big overhands, stay in the face of her opponent. And I think that's where she can kind of win some rounds, have the ability to kind of, hurt Verna on the feet or look for opportunities on the ground as well. And I really just think anywhere this fight goes, Dern has the ability to win this fight. Also, you got to add in the age dynamic here. And, you've got Verna, who's going to be turning 38 soon. You've got Dern, 32 in her prime. I just think this is set up very much for Dern to get this victory here. I'm not really sure how she got into this situation here, getting a title fight. But I do think the matchmakers have made a very nice setup for her to get this victory. So I'm going Mackenzie Dern to get the job done and become champion, -155. Next one we're going to talk about is Nasrat Haqparast. He is -110 in the comeback. We've got Quinlan Salkilld. He is -110. Also, we got a pick him price tag here. Now, this is an interesting fight. You've got a UFC vet in Nasrat, and you've got this, starting to get a little hype behind him, and a young, prospect here in Salkilld. Now, Nasrat does have some really nice boxing, fast hand speed. He's another guy who's pretty good at, distance management, mixing it up a little bit, slick combinations from the outside. And he does have a very large experience level here in the UFC. And that's definitely going to matter here. I think, and that's going to be interesting to see what level Salkilld is at. This is a step up for him. This is a step down, for Nasrat, but it's going to be interesting kind of how that plays out. But I do think there is a path that can be available for a fighter here. Now, Salkilld only has 2 UFC fights under his belt. He's pretty well-rounded overall. He does have, some decent boxing, decent striking, but really wrestling is his main path, implementing a wrestle-heavy approach, push forward, stay in the face of his opponent, and really, be aggressive and tuck takedowns behind these combinations and really mix it up there. Just as, Nasrat's starting to be comfortable on the feet, look for the takedowns and find opportunities to win positionally. Now, the part here that you look at when sometimes you look at stats, right? If you're just looking over at a stat, you got Nasrat, who's at an 84% defense rate. Now, that sounds high, but it's, in my opinion, it's very misleading, and it's a little off. So you kind of look at the 84%. Yes, that's good, but he hasn't really had to face somebody who's going to push a relentless pace of wrestling and have the credentials and the ability to get these takedowns. Now, over his last 7 UFC fights, 4 of them, the opponent didn't even shoot a takedown on Nasrat, so didn't even have to worry about defending takedowns. Now, 3 other fights, one of them was King Green, shot 1 takedown, 1 half-hearted takedown, didn't get it. The other one was Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker doesn't take anyone down. Like, he just doesn't. Like, I think he just doesn't. And this might have been the most takedowns he's had in his career, in his long career in the UFC. He was 3 for 7 on takedowns against Nasrat. And then the one fight that really, I think, kind of inflated the number here for Nasrat and his takedown defense rate was against Jared Gordon. And Jared Gordon was 0 for 13. Now, as crazy as that does sound, that he was able to stuff all of them, Jared Gordon, he doesn't really find much success when it comes to him taking his opponent down. Out of his last 9 fights, he's only secured 6 takedowns. So he is not somebody that is just, oh, wow, he's found a ton of success. He was looking for these takedowns because he didn't like what was going on the feet, trying to mix it up a little bit, and he wasn't able to get any of those takedowns. While Quinlan here, yes, he has not faced the higher level fighters, but he has 17 takedowns over his last 3 fights. Now, and that's including in the Dana White Contender Series and the 2 UFC fights. Now, I get it. It's lower level opponents here, but what I liked is the fact that he's got the cardio to do this. He can keep fueling these takedowns. He can be repetitive with the shots. He has that gas tank that he can continually fuel them. And that is really good to see, because if he doesn't get those first few, he's got to be able to continually push that kind of pace here. And he is a high pace type of fighter. When he's in the clinch, he's active. When he's on the ground, he's active. When he's on the feet moving forward, he's active. And he's always putting something out there, whether it's combinations, whether he's looking to crash the pocket, where he's looking for takedowns. And that's a smothering type of pressure that some fighters can't really handle here. Now, if he finds success with the takedowns, which I do believe he's going to, I think that's where he slows down Nasrat, gets away from that striking and the boxing of Nasrat and allows him to find success here. So I like him to get the job done here. I do think Quinlan Salkilld gets the job done here. -110. That's what I'm going with in this spot. And the last one here we're going to talk about is going to be Jose Delgado. He is -150 on the comeback. We have Nathaniel Wood. He is +125. Now, you've got Delgado here, and there's definitely some things to like about this kid. He's very aggressive. He's got a lot of power. He's well-rounded. He's got 100% finish rate, 10 wins, 6 knockouts, 4 submissions. So this kid's been able to show a lot here. Also, you got to add in on Saturday, he will have a size advantage here. He's going to be the taller fighter. He's going to be the longer fighter with reach. So we will have those advantages here. Now, Delgado is coming off a round 1 knockout victory over Haqparast. Now, the Haqparast fight was, I thought Haider was going to find some success in that fight there. And I understand he's the Hurricane, but he fought like an idiot. Let's just be real. He fought like an idiot. He went out, he moved forward. Even when he was finding a little bit of success, is just guns blazing. And, there's a point that you got to have a little bit of strategy. You got to do that. But also, he's going into a guy who wants this. Delgado's looking for that type of fight. He wants you to come into the fire. He wants to have a brawl. He's looking for these finishes, and it materialized because of his willingness to stand into the fire with Delgado. Now, Nathaniel Wood is definitely a different type of fighter when you're looking at this. And this is also, in my opinion, a step down in competition here for Nathaniel Wood. Now, he definitely has had the higher level of, strength of schedule. He beat, Andre Feely, Charles Jourdain, Morgan Charrier. Now, these are guys with UFC wins, UFC caliber fighters. And this is definitely, a spot here where we do know that Nathaniel is going to be the smaller fighter between these two. He's probably more suited for 135, 145. I think, he's definitely undersized, but it's something that he has dealt with, and he has looked good since moving up in weight. Yes, he always looks like the smaller guy, but the one thing that he's going to have here is he's got the speed, and I really like what I'm seeing from him when he's bouncing in and out of the pocket. He's very risk adverse. He's a guy that's not going to do what Haqparast did, crash the pocket, swing crazy. He is very clean on the feet, has very good striking, can mix it up a lot. He's a very good point fighter also. That's something that I like about Wood, is that he's a good point fighter. Again, work at range, pitter patter the shots, and I like his leg kicks. He's really starting to focus on those, mix in a leg kick, throw a nice 1-2 combination, get back out of range, and that could start to really wear on a younger fighter that doesn't have that kind of experience level overall. And I think you got to add in the fact that Wood is somebody who's tough to finish. Last time he was finished in the UFC was back in 2020. So he's a guy that is risk adverse, has the good striking, has the good ability to kind of mix up combinations. He can look for takedowns. I think if he needs it, he can find some of those takedowns. But I just think Delgado in this spot at a plus money number, at a favorite number here, I think he's just too raw. And I think that Nathaniel Wood has the ability to fight smart, win rounds, bank rounds on the feet, mix it up, and get the victory here. So I'm taking Nathaniel Wood plus 125 to get the job done. So there you have it for my plays for UFC 321. If you want to become a client, link down in the description, as well as my Caesars Sportsbook promotion, also down in the description if you want to take a look at it. And let's keep cashing. We've been cashing, we've been finding profit, but RDR, I swear, our RDR is dead to me. He's dead to me completely. But this weekend, we're going to have a big week. So see you next week, and let's cash.